So I'm going to do my best. If I screw up your names completely, I apologize ahead of time. So, yeah. Here we go. Fashundo, Lapinte, Mellow. All right. Let's go. Can you hear it? Let me know in the chat if you can hear it. All right. Really good start here. I really enjoyed listening to that. It was dope. Um, I would say it's like some of the sounds are a bit loud and come across a bit harsh as my first impression. Um, I think the tune's dope, and I think it's very in vogue right now. Like it's kind of like a lot of the guys that were doing more minimal stuff a couple of years ago are doing stuff that's kind of like this right now. But I think I think it's really dope, and I think it's kind of quite on the moment. This kind of like throwback 90s kind of sound, but that's being done in like a more of a like I think, when was it, like 2012, whatever, there was this kind of like throwback deep house movement, whereas now I think there's kind of the same kind of thing, but it's more like people are taking inspiration from old like rave tracks and breakbeat and this kind of stuff, and I think this vibe fits in with that really well. There's a few things in the mix down that are a bit harsh. Like when it starts, I can just hear like that. I'm listening on headphones and studio monitors, and like that clap is like already a bit like rough to listen to. So when you turn that up to like 100 decibels in a club, that's going to just shred people's ears, bro. Like, I think that's something, like, I know I struggle with that myself. I always put my claps too loud, but it's like, I think it's important to play your tracks out if you can, play them louder. And it's like, there's a kind of like, there's a difference between listening in your studio and going like, oh, I want that to really punch through the mix, and having it like so loud that it's just destroying people's hearing. You know what I mean? Like it's gonna, like when your tracks get played at a really loud volume, the balance changes a bit. So you want to keep that in mind when you're mixing your tracks. So bring that clap down. The hats also are a bit loud. The bass sounds, it's kind of, I don't know what it is. Let me have a look at the spectrum. Maybe it's just really loud. But like the bass is quite, it's in this bit in particular, it sounds a bit weird. Yeah, I think that maybe the bass is a little bit too loud, but and maybe a bit too much mid-range in it. But when it gets into the rest of the track, it's not as, it blends in quite well. Like I think the sound selection is pretty cool in the track. Everything works well. There's nothing that stands out too much like it shouldn't be there. The arrangement's really great. It keeps it interesting, keeps the energy flowing well. There was this bit before the break where it like the energy starts to drop down, and then then you kind of take out some of the percussion. I think like that gradual reduction in energy I think it's better when you kind of make a clean cut for that, like, because you can kind of build it up and then cut it away, and that creates like a moment for people on the dance floor. When you kind of go and slowly bring out the hats and stuff, it feels like the energy's coming away from the track a bit more. So if I grab that bit there, duplicate it to here, and then we listen. It's kind of it gives it a bit more impact in the effect that you're trying to create. So I think you could find a way to do that in a way that makes more of a moment of it rather than just kind of eases into that moment. But yeah, I think like from arrangement, sound selection wise, really cool. Just some of the mixes a bit rough around the edges, but that doesn't really change the fact whether it's a cool track or not. And I think it works. So well done. And I really liked some of the vocal chops and stuff that you've used. Like they sound kind of classy, fit with the style that you're going for. So yeah, good stuff. All right, Mark Holmes. So Mark this is for a new label that Mark is starting. I want to shout it out. So let me just find that information. So this is going to be the first release on a new label he's starting with his good friends Heist. And they're sitting on a few tracks, so they've got a bit of a back catalogue to go with. Let me have a look. The vocalist, the vocal's an original vocal, which is cool. Third Room Records, I guess, is going to be the name of the label. So big up, Mark. Good stuff, man. I think, yeah, if guys, if you're sending demos to labels and you're not getting any love, there's a lot more that goes into it than just like creating a banger and getting it signed to Hot Creations. Labels are looking for some kind of hype, something extra. If you can get 1 million followers on Instagram or fucking whatever, like I don't think necessarily 1 million followers on Instagram is important or even necessarily that beneficial. Don't go and buy followers. Having a genuine following for something is really beneficial. Or like, yeah, so basically anything that you can do to build up your profile before sending out demos to labels is going to benefit you. And starting a label is one of those things. You can put out your tracks on Bandcamp or whatever. You can start making money from them, which you probably won't make by releasing them with labels, especially small labels. Then you can take that money, invest it back into your music through getting vocalists or something, or invest it into marketing, whatever, but if the music's good and you can kind of create a following through marketing that music, then that following is something that you can use to convince the labels that you want to be on to release your music. It's kind of a proof of concept that your music works, people are into your music, and then I'm just trying to think of the name is escaping me at the moment, but one of the dudes who releases on Fuse and stuff, he used to do like kind of more housey stuff. I think he started Casey Spillman. He started releasing on like Divine Sounds, is it? Sam Divine's label, and then he kind of transitioned to releasing with like Fuse and Locust and stuff. And I think he built some hype by releasing a series of tracks on Bandcamp, and that's how Enzo from Fuse found out about him. And so I think there's really you don't have to release your music on a label. In fact, if you do it yourself, you've got full control of it. So it's a good idea. Anyway, enough of my ranting. Let's get into this track. I'm going to skip through the tracks a little bit. I'd like to listen to them all in full, but it's going to take all day, and we want to get through a few tracks. So sorry to interrupt your track, Mark, and this may have influenced the feedback I gave to Washundo before. I just realized I had a gain plugin on the master which was pumping up the volume, so I apologize for that. I've got it sorted, and yeah, so let's start from here.
We're taking flight, so hold me tight. Feels like we're taking flight, flying, flying, flying higher, flying, flying, flying higher, flying, flying, flying higher, flying, flying so high. I'm falling, we're flying. I'm falling so deep into the. I'm falling, we're flying. I'm falling so deep into the. Hold me tight. Feels like we're taking flight. Hold me tight. Feels like we're taking flight. Flying, flying, flying higher, flying, flying, flying higher, flying, flying, flying higher, flying, flying so high. Baby, 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 yeah. Baby, 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 yeah. Baby, 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 yeah. Baby, 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 yeah. Hold me tight. Feels like we're taking flight. So hold me tight. Feels like we're taking flight. Flying, flying, flying higher. Flying, flying, flying higher. Flying, flying, flying higher. Flying, flying so high. Flying, flying, flying higher. Flying, flying, flying higher. Flying, flying, flying higher. Flying, flying so high. I'm falling, we're flying. I'm falling so deep into the. I'm falling, we're flying. I'm falling so deep into the.
All right, we're going to call it there. Always good, Mark. I love your stuff, man. It's like such a cool, soulful vibe. Yeah, I really like it. And always really well produced as well. Yeah, my initial comments were going to be about the mix, and we established why that was probably going to be, why it was sounding harsh, because I'm an idiot and I had a gain plugin on the master, so I apologize about that. Yeah, it's sounding really dope, bro. I love it, and congratulations on the new label. It's going to be a cool first release. One thing I thought was a bit so you have this break where everything comes away. Cool, great atmosphere in that. But then the piano comes in, and it's come from it being like very empty, and then the piano comes in, and it feels a bit thin. Like, obviously you've cut away some of the subs on the piano, which makes sense when the piano is playing with the rest of the stuff. But here, when there's not much else playing, I think you could just use some automation on that EQ and let some of those subs through. Then it's going to make a like strong impact. Let's just listen to that bit again.
Hold me tight. Feels like we're taking flight. Flying higher.
You hear what I mean? Like it's a bit thin. Like it doesn't on the dance floor. That's not going to like hit you. That's just going to happen, you know. So when the bass and the kick and everything's happening, you don't notice that the piano sounds thin, and you've probably done it like that so that it fits with those other elements. But in this moment, I think you could really benefit from having a bit more body in that piano. Maybe instead of using a low cut, you could use like a shelf on it, because it's not problematic here, but it does still sound a little bit thin to my ears. But anyway, I mean, that's, you know, getting nitpicky. Really cool track, and well done on finding a cool vocalist. I mean, it sounds, where did you say you found her? Soundbetter.com. And I think the price you mentioned was pretty good, so congrats. It's, yeah, really dope. Let me just go back to this first track, and I want to hear if the hats and stuff are as harsh as I thought they were. So just for Shando, to give you some clarification on that, I think your mix is still a bit hyped in the top end. Your clap and hats are maybe a bit too bright, and you could probably benefit from bringing up the sub and the kick a bit to balance it out a bit more, so it's not so top heavy. You probably want to have it a bit more, so like modern mixes are generally quite bright, but you also want to have that really strong sub and kick. Okay, here we are with Chris Lowen. Hope that's right. Let's have a listen. Chris sent me about 1,000 tracks, and I had to pick one, but this was the one he wanted to go with. You'll notice I've turned that down. It was like about -7 LUFS, so I've just made everything at like -9 LUFS, so they're comparable.
but I'm never giving up. I've got to try. All I want, all I want, all I want is your love. You never say it. All I want, all I want, all I want is your love. You never say it. All I 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 want it. All I want it. All I want it. All I want it.
All right, Chris. So Chris is his kind of dream labels to release on are the likes of Toolroom and Defected, and obviously you can hear it's in a kind of housey, tech house, clubby kind of direction. Just to clarify from the chat, I said his name incorrectly. Chris Lowen. Okay, so I think really cool. It's sounding, you know, like you're hitting all the everything's heading in the right direction for where you want to release and what you're going for. And I think you've added your own spin to it, which is cool. Like, you know, you don't, it's like, let's just say Elias and Barrientos, right? They're a big part of the Toolroom family. If you send Toolroom a track that sounds exactly like the last Elias and Barrientos track, they're going to be like, well, this is cool, but why do they want to sign it if it sounds just like they've already got Elias and Barrientos? Why do they need another one? That's my point. So yeah, cool that you're kind of going in the direction you want to go, but finding your own sound with it. It doesn't sound bad or wrong, but just a personal taste thing. I think I prefer a little bit more atmosphere on my vocals, but that's just me. I like to I like a bit more reverb and stuff in the background. But there was a couple of things I heard which I thought you could benefit from fixing up. One is just like so at the start you've got some like this, it's Lolita Holloway, right, from the Dish, I can't remember the name of it. It's so overused, man. Like it's like at this point it's like, is it classic or is it like just oversaturated? And I think at least for a few years I would not put any of that kind of stuff, anything from that particular sample or that particular song in any of my tracks. And it doesn't signal what the track is going to be. So I get, you know, that the reason it's been sampled so much is because it's absolutely amazing. But at this point, I think you benefit from leaving it out rather than leaving it in. Then there was another. You've done some. It's like a really cool effect that you've put on some of this piano or synths or something. Let's have a listen. So it's kind of like phasing and distortion, and I'm not sure exactly what it is that you've done to it. It sounds cool, but at the same time, it also makes it sound quite muffled, and so I'd find a way to maybe let through a bit more of the original sound, so you can kind of blend that effect, because it makes it sound quite unique. If you can blend that with something that's not so kind of thin and muffled, if that makes sense.
You never say it. Time to realize I've lost this fight.
Let's see if there's another bit where it's playing.
Never giving up. I've got to try. All I want, all I want, all I want, all I want. Time to realize I've lost.
See, like the guitars and stuff there sound really, really good. They've got a bit more body to them. But then when you get in here, they sound a bit thin and phasey, and it's a really cool, unique sound. But if you can execute that with a bit more punch and body, then I think it would be really dope. Yeah, but in general, really solid. Again, those kind of weird phasey sounds on the instrumentation, they kind of make it sound like something's going wrong, if that makes sense. And yeah, so I think if you can do that with either duplicate the channel or use like a dry wet, so you can kind of control the amount of the original and the amount of the affected signal, or put it on a return channel, so like parallel. Yeah, someone said in the chat, Gabriel Wood, parallel processing, it's the key. That's why I do a lot of it. So yeah, man, really cool. Fix up that sound, get out those overused samples, and you can use something to take part of the original vocal, put some effects on it, and use that in the intro. So moving on, my man Dickie Claire. All right, now he didn't enable download on his SoundCloud, so I've ripped this, so the signal, the quality's not going to be the best, but let's see. right. Always love the vibe on these ones from Dickie. Really nice. Yeah, as a few people have pointed out in the chat, like the kick's not quite working. Maybe a bit loud. I don't know if it is too loud, maybe a few dB too loud, but it's got quite a knock on the top, like because the track's quite vibey. You could benefit from maybe doing like a high shelf on the kick to get some of that kind of knock out of the way. It feels like it's missing a bit of like punch in the sub. It's got the like lower bass frequencies, which are, let's see here. Yeah, I would say a good trick is to double that bass with a sub and just have the sub like quite a lot lower. It's just going to fill out that low end. Have the sub like really sidechain it to the kick, and it's just going to like provide a bit more body underneath that bass, and maybe also play with the cut off on that bass. Putting the sub might solve the problem, but it does feel a bit mid-rangey. So you might benefit from just experiment. Do the sub thing first, then experiment with pulling back the cutoff a little bit, and then the benefit of pulling back the cutoff a little bit is then you can open that cutoff at some points to kind of create a bit more energy or create a bit of a moment, to create a bit more tension. Really solid vibes. With the kick, another thought is like, and this is like advice to anybody, like when you find a good kick, use it. Like you don't need a new kick for every track. What a really good so you can take the same kick that you know works, and you can use like a volume envelope on it to make it shorter or longer to sit in your track. And then you can also like EQ off the top end and put on like a top kick that you've cut from like 500-600 hertz. So then it kind of has a different characteristic in the high end, but you know that you've got this kick that works really solidly and just punches in the club. So I think if you speak to like a lot of like pro producers, most of them will say like they've got a few kicks that they know work that they just use for different tracks and they reuse them. That's certainly the case with me. And where do you get these kicks? I mean, I've got a video on my channel on how to sample them. Or if you, get them wherever you can. But once you find one, hold on to it and reuse it. All right. How do I say this? Gioli and Asia, Inside Your Head, Luca Pincer remix. I remember Luca saying this is another, he submitted a track last time which was for the Hot Since 82 remix competition, and this one's for a CR2 remix competition, I believe. So let's have a listen. Good luck, Luca. just going back to what I said about the kick just before, this kick sounds a bit boxy to me. Like, what that means when you hear people say that is like it kind of around here, somewhere between like 300 hertz mark. Let me just accentuate it. See how when I pull that out, the kick sounds a bit tighter. It doesn't mean it's necessarily a bad kick, but again, if you find a kick that you don't need to EQ or anything like that, then that's the best thing you can have. But yeah, let's see how the kick works with the rest of the elements. We're in the intro still. I just wanted to point that out. Nice vibes. I'm not entirely sure. It's kind of like, I'm not entirely sure what it's supposed to be, because it's kind of somewhere in between really mellow and really peak time. So I'm not entirely sure what you're going for, Luca. So I don't want to imply that, but one thing I will say is like this like offbeat bass line. It's very simple, but it's hard to execute in a way that is groovy. And I think for my taste here, it feels a little bit robotic. Using like, so in order to execute this really in a kind of groovy way, I think it's really important to have each note set the volume of each note in a way that really creates some kind of groove. So that kind of creates like a rolling kind of feeling with it. Also, if you can implement like ghost notes into the bass, which is basically just like much more quiet notes, then excuse me, then you can have the like hard offbeat and then some kind of softer notes that help to kind of push and pull with the kick in the bass. It feels a little bit stiff for my taste here. Now, this bit where you bring in the vocal. It feels a bit washed out. I'm not familiar with the original, so maybe that's how the original is, or how the vocal is. But it feels a bit washed out to me. Then it's nice. It creates a nice atmosphere, but would you let me? Would you let me? Would you take me inside your brain? Would you take me? Would you take me? See, it's kind of, it's in properly here. There, the when people are bringing in a vocal or an element with a filter, so slowly introducing the high frequencies, the point is to create some kind of tension and or ease it in. So what's happening here is you're kind of creating this ethereal background feeling to it, and then it kind of goes away. So it's not working with the energy flow in the track for me, but the break I think works pretty cool. Someone, Gabriel Wood, pointed out in the chat, it needs, he said, a more dramatic evolution and automation. I 100% agree with that. Like, you've got some really cool elements, but they kind of like come in and come out and come in and come out. They're not like, so you bring in a synth and then it sits and then it comes out. What I would recommend doing is like maybe some things bring them in dramatically, some things ease them in. That way the track feels like it's kind of like the elements are like weaving into each other more. And then when you bring it in, you can use like frequency automation or delay and reverb automation, saturation, to build that element to somewhat more of a crescendo, make it increase in intensity and kind of make it more dramatic. So like it kind of like you've done it here with that synth, but that synth, when it gets, it doesn't have a lot of body, so when it gets higher, it starts to sound a bit brittle. Maybe here when you take things away, this was basically the same thing I mentioned in Mark's track before. So from a mixing perspective, yeah, cutting out quite a lot of the body of a clap or something is a really good idea. But when you have it playing by itself in such an empty part of the track, you probably want to automate that low cut and bring a bit more body into it. Like, I think those claps would benefit from having a bit more low mid information. They just sound a bit more full on in that moment, and then just take it away when you don't need it when the kick's playing. So you kind of like, again, it's with the energy. Like, it's, yeah, this is why I said it's hard for me to quite understand what the track is supposed to be, because this is like a very chill out type of vibe here, but then you've got elements that are kind of, some of these synths are a bit trancey, so like you're kind of building up quite a bit of energy there, but then this part where it kind of decays on feels a little bit too suspended, a little bit too long. Instead of creating tension, it goes a bit beyond that and loses the tension, and then when the kick drops back in, it doesn't provide enough oomph to make it feel like, yeah. So that may not be what you're going for, but that's my feedback for there. Yeah, so I think just working your elements, important for any track, just so things don't get stale. And yeah, deciding like what giving the track a clear personality. What do you want it to be? Will, I think, really benefit from that. Anyone will really benefit from that, because it then informs your decision making of like how to do the arrangement, how to mix it, what are the important elements for the mix, and yeah. All right, so good stuff, and good luck on the competition. Some really cool elements in there. I like some of the kind of ethereal, trancey synths and stuff. Okay, Joe Lerner times bide mini eggs. What did he sent me? Joe Lerner, sorry. This is a aggressive warehouse tune I've been working on my friends. Struggling adding things to keep it interesting. It gets a little bit repetitive at the moment. So any ideas around what could go in there would be great. Again, apologies, it cuts off abruptly. The project is on their laptop, which I guess means Bide's laptop. So I haven't heard the track yet, but I think something really important to keep in mind for people is that, like, this idea of like, hey Joe, this idea of like needing to add more things, it's like it's somehow a trap. Like, I think you want to aim to, like, in the idea development stage, like before you start arranging and that kind of thing, try to have too many elements for the track. That's like, how do I know that my track is ready to arrange? It's because I can kind of somehow picture the arrangement, and that it's like, so I can imagine that, okay, well, this synth could play, and then this one could come in, and this could be like big in the break, and then it can kind of take over as the main theme or something like that. I'm just talking shit at the moment, but it's just as an example. So like, yeah, I would it becomes very hard to keep motivated in the parts of in the final process of the track when you're searching for new ideas and searching. Yeah, so I would say from a workflow perspective, the best approach, in my opinion, is to really like overdo it in the idea generation phase, like have too many things and then like whittle it down, because then you can always bring those back and you can always use them in another track or whatever, you know. But you've got so much ammunition, as I like to call it. So anyway, that rant aside, let's take a listen. Alrighty. It's really cool vibe, Joe. I think you've got something going on there. Yeah, I mean, I think your aggressive warehouse vibe description hits the nail on the head. Really dope. Gabriel said in the chat there that you get into it pretty fast. It progresses pretty quickly. I'm going to just assume that the intro is still to come. Let's just say that this bit's maybe here and you're going to put an intro into the start there. I get what you mean about the wanting something else or wanting something more. I don't necessarily know that it needs another main element, as so to speak. I think working the elements that you've got, guys like Latman is really good at this type of thing, where he basically has a pretty simple or a pretty concise groove that he uses throughout the track, and then keeps it interesting by adding like different fills and effects and kind of little So making these like little mini break bits unique each time. So kind of, yeah, more like, so you kind of like create the sections in your track and then figure out how to make each one different by adding and subtracting the elements that you've got, and then editing using different fills, or kind of maybe doing something like recording all of the drums to a new track, and then you cut out the drums you've got and reverse the bit that you recorded to create this effect. I think you know what I mean, but or just I don't think it's necessarily that you need more elements. You can, it's just like working the elements that you've got. You know, in some parts you could like introduce the vocal with a filter. You could have a section where you cut out the drums and just have like the kick and bass. You could have another section where you chop the vocal differently and use a different pattern. Get some effects plugins like, what's that free one, D-Blue Glitch, and then basically just like go through and record yourself like tweaking a bunch of things like on the vocal, or yeah, I mean, I think the vocal, the way you're using it is, it's cool, but it does get a bit stale. So I think creating some kind of change, some kind of variation in that, you'd really benefit from that. Yeah, maybe it could have another element. Something a bit like high frequency. It's really overdone, but these kind of like siren-y type sounds on the drop fit for that. Or just some kind of like string staccato kind of string stabs or something like that, something that's going to sit above what you've got there and add more energy. Or it could be like, yeah, like if you know, just a matter of, like I said, cutting out the beats and then adding like a string or a pad or something that's got that kind of high energy, high frequency tension, and then so kind of using that more high frequency element to replace the frequencies that you're cutting from the drums, and then bring it back in. So yeah, just like push yourself to be creative, like really cool. I'm trying to think. There's a track that was on Miadora Raw Kiss. It's like got this, I may be remembering it wrong, but I think it's got maybe a similar vibe, but a different kind of vocal. But they use the vocal, it's got a chopped up vocal sample, and it's got this kind of warehousey vibe. Maybe it has a piano or something. But their track, I think it's about 8 minutes or something, and it's really simple. It's like 909 drums, but they keep it fresh. So maybe reference that. Yeah, hopefully that was helpful. But like, always important to try working the elements you've got as best you can before going, I need a new element. That's the takeaway I want people to make from that. All right, Ecstasy and Roma, or featuring Roma, Morning Rises. So let me just check here if I was leveling everything to -9 LUFS, but I'm not sure where I got to with that. Yeah, cool. Like the vibe on that. That's really cool, really cool, and very original, unique sounding. I think that could be, yeah, that could be a really dope tune. Yeah, yeah. I don't know how to say your name, dude. I'm so sorry. Jamie, James Starrick. Yes, I totally agree. Ibiza Sunset would be sick. I've got a couple of tips for you though. I would say subtlety in music is like, especially this kind of music, is really important. And I think it's very difficult to find a balance between subtle and boring. I like the kind of stripped back drum vibe that you've got here, but I think you need like a couple of little extra shaker, hat fills, percussion bits, not happening like constantly in a loop, but just kind of happening, like a very subtle, like a subtle kind of drum fill at the end of every couple of bars, or a little hat, a little extra shaker here and a little extra hat there, just to keep that drum groove like happening over 4 or 8 bars rather than such a tight loop. Just like a few, just kind of think about if you're watching, like visually watching a real drummer doing that, and they'd be like, like just add in a couple of little drum variations, and that's going to keep that pattern kind of turning over and keep it more interesting, basically. Then I was thinking, there's this other drum bit that you bring in, which is really cool. I can see why you've used it. It's really got a really interesting texture to it. Here, I think it's either a bit high in the mix, or maybe you could EQ it a bit. I don't know. It's like it sounds really cool, and it's a really interesting sound, but I would try muting it and not putting it in the track, or try just bringing it down in volume a bit. It's a bit harsh, and for me it clashes a little bit with the vibe, or with the groove. Yeah, I think maybe it could work with just the ride coming in there. Then the next bit, I thought, I'm not sure if it's part of a sample, but I thought here it got a bit hectic. You introduced this kind of piano bit. To me, that's going in a different direction. That's going in some kind of like old school, like subliminal kind of house direction. Maybe like something that would be on like Strictly Rhythm, or I don't know, maybe New York kind of house, which is cool. But I think this track would benefit maybe from not having that piano. And then these bits here, I think also you could take them out, or if you kind of strip it back a bit more, and then you have this like down-pitched vocal. It sounds a bit harsh as well, but yeah, if you have that a bit more stripped back, have that, and then with a bit more delay or something like that, so it's kind of echoing out a bit more, and it creates a bit more of a ethereal moment, and then you start building it back up. That could work really well. Yeah, I think you're introducing a lot of things here, which I don't think it needs it, and I don't think they're adding to the track. I get the desire to, like, when you're working, to like add a new thing and need more and more and more, but also a really important part of the creative process is taking things out. I think you could even use these kind of ethereal vocals to kind of create tension here without this bell sound. And then when it comes back in there, it's going to have so much impact because it's, you know, you've had it up to here. Fade that bell out. This would be my advice anyway. Fade that bell out so it's gone, and then this is more ethereal. Then you kind of use these crashes to build up, and then you drop that bell sound back in here, and then it's going to have like this kind of, yeah, it's going to provide a lot of energy, and it's going to make it really exciting because you haven't had that kind of main theme bit happening here. Yeah, that's my advice. But yeah, really dope, man, and original sounding, love it. Good stuff. Okay, J Deep. Now I've written that name in there because it said Paul. His email is jdeep, and on Patreon he's JD, and then his track said Paul, so I'm just assuming it's JDeep. So if you're in the chat, please let us know. Is it JDeep? I hope so. All right, it's a cool name. Let's have a listen. stuff. I'm now more confused. J Deep, Paul J. So I checked, and you'd written back to me on Patreon Messenger, and you said you wanted me to call you Paul J. Now you're J Deep in the chat, so I'm even more confused. Anyway, I changed the name to Paul J because that's what you said. So let's go with Paul J. Right. So you've got a lot going on in this track, and I'm going to go out on a limb here, and I'm going to say that when you started to arrange it, you started from here and you went this way, because by the time we get to 30 seconds into the track, you've already introduced and used a lot of elements into the track, which is a common pitfall that I see people making, and I did that for years, and I would like to suggest a better method for arrangement, in my opinion. These things are always only my opinion. However you want to do it. If you get the result you're looking for, then keep doing it. But what I do now is I will basically bring in all of my elements, and I will arrange. I might arrange the kick and kind of put in the breaks and things, but I'm going to focus on like this part of the track, this is the track, this part here, and I'm going to make sure that this bit makes sense, that when I listen to this, it conveys the message that I want to convey with the track, because this is the part that people are going to listen to on Beatport. And if you make a, say, radio edit or something for Spotify, this is the part that's going to be in it. Or for radio, if people still listen to radio. So, I think it's really important to focus on what's... this part of the track is telling the main story. And then, this is what I do, is I then go and fill in the rest, and this will be my secondary part of the track, and this will be my secondary part of the track, and then I'll add in an intro and an outro, and those are generally very basic. They're focused on being DJ friendly, because what you've done here is you started off with a lot of energy and a lot of things going on. Like that percussion groove, I think, could be much more stripped back. I don't think there's a need to introduce the bass. Then, you've got the vocal coming in as well. You've got piano. You've got the kick and the bass. Is there some shakers or something? You're dropping so much stuff in at that drop. You could really use some of that to make to continue adding things throughout the rest of the track. And then you wouldn't probably need to add so many different elements throughout the track. In my opinion, the vocal and... So you've got these two kind of conflicting piano elements in there as well. One is very deep and moody, this kind of chord thing that you've got happening on the... That's very deep, kind of moody vibes. And then this one here is really kind of soulful. So those two elements are kind of conflicting a bit, in my opinion. They're if you take it back to what I was saying at the start, what are you trying to communicate with the track? They're not communicating a clear picture, a clear feeling, a clear emotion. So yeah, just try to think about it of like what's the personality of the track, and is this element adding to that personality or subtracting from that personality, or getting in the way of communicating that personality. So I would say choose one of those things. But I think, yeah, then you've got this horn or something that comes in. I don't think you need it. I think get rid of it. It's not adding to the track. It's not the personality. What you want to do is decide what are those key elements of your track, what makes up your track, arrange it, mix it, everything so that those shine. And then the other elements in your track should be supporting those and kind of making it so that those shine. You can then, so something that I do quite frequently in a track is I try to have some kind of surprise element, or maybe an element that comes in the break, and then so you've got, I use a lot of kind of chord stabs and that kind of thing. So I might have a melodic theme that's happening through here. Then in the break, I'll introduce like a new melodic theme that either works with or takes over from the first melodic theme, and then it goes back to the original or something like that. So, but those will be two very strong elements that convey a similar message or work together to strengthen the same message. I just feel like you've kind of added a lot of stuff that is confusing that message. Like changing up the drums all the time. It's like, try to put yourself in the shoes of a person on the dance floor, or a person who's listening to this on Spotify or wherever you would like people to listen to it. And you know, how is this going to work for them? Are they going to be let me just check, is this, yeah, are they going to, what emotion are you trying to convey with them? How are you trying to influence their energy? I know this kind of maybe sounds a little bit like wishy-washy, but this is what music is. It's like, it's a communication of energy, and we as like producers or DJs, DJing, I think about it the same way. It's like you've got the ability to influence someone's mood or someone's kind of manipulate their energy, right? So you can, and I think it's important to have a purpose for that in mind, so that when you come into a break like this, you're like, well, I want it to create a lot of tension and then release that tension at the drop, or I want it to be like very emotional and ethereal and create a sense of calm, or whatever, you know, but have a clear purpose in mind for that break, and introduce or subtract elements that help to convey that purpose and help to influence the energy of the track, which then in turn influences the energy of the listener in the way that you've decided to do it. So I think just to kind of summarize this, I think you've got the essence of a really cool house tune in there that could totally work and be like really classy, and like I think the vocal, the piano, the main drum groove, if you figure out a way to make the track about that, then it's going to be a winner. So good stuff, and thanks for submitting it, mate. All right, Adria Balco. After all, let's go. Oh. So I just want to interrupt this for a second. Ecstasy, if you're still watching, listen here. This is only happening every 8 bars, but Adria here has put in just this little kind of tiny, like one snare fill at the end of each 8 bars, and it just kind of helps it to turn over a little bit more and makes it continue to be interesting. It's not like really influencing or impacting the groove in any like strong way, but this is kind of what I was talking about. It's just one extra snare sound.
I have to. I still trust. I can say from falling, but I still trust. I have to keep going. I'm still the heart.
All right, Adria, really cool, man. I like it. I think that. Sorry, I was skipping through because I realized we're running out of time, and I want to get these other tracks in as well. So I apologize to these last couple of people. Maybe I waffled on a bit too much with some of the other ones, and yeah. But anyway, I think there's a couple of things that I've touched on previous tracks happening here. Is that you're introducing a lot of elements in this kind of intro part, right? I think you could get away with having a lot less, and also introducing using a bit more automation, like so a bit more filter automation to like introduce these chords and stuff. I don't think you even need the chords in there yet. The chords could probably come in here after, and then you could filter them up. Then you wouldn't need to bring the bass in here. So it's kind of about saving those. Try to instead of like, I think it's quite easy to have this mindset of like, what more things do I add to the track? Whereas I think a much better mindset, the one that I try to cultivate in myself, is having fewer elements that are more impactful, and then in the arrangement, how can I preserve those elements and save them for later, which generally involves like working an element more while it's being introduced, or while it's there, so that each of those elements gets to have its kind of moment. So what you could do then is bring the chords in with a filter. You wouldn't need to introduce the vocal yet, or you could just have like a very subtle taster of the vocal. Have the chords like come up maybe a bit bigger than they do, and then drop back down where you introduce the bass here. And that's going to like be a very DJ friendly way to do it. It's also going to help you to hold back some elements, which is going to allow them to shine more when you bring them in, because the longer that you have an element in there, especially when it's static and just kind of staying the same, the more the listener tunes it out, right? So then that's when you start to feel like, oh, I need more elements, but that's not the case. You just need to use those elements in more dynamic ways. Really cool. I think someone mentioned that in the chat. Really cool vocal. I love it. And the arrangement is, it's cool. It works. I think just is mainly this intro, and I'm going to guess the outro. Strip them out a bit more. Use those elements a bit more sparingly so that they can kind of create more tension and release throughout.
I have to keep going. I have to keep us going.
So this would be a good moment for, something like I was talking about in the last track, where I said like I like to bring in maybe like a secondary lead synth element, and that could be done like, I don't know, that could be done like here or something like that. So you could switch it up, because these chords are happening the whole way through, right? You do introduce other elements, but they're more like kind of one-off than a pattern. But yeah, I think really cool. I would just work on, if you can work the elements a bit like I was suggesting, then they're also not going to they're not going to get boring or seem like it's always the same, so kind of try to create some like ebbs and flows with automation. All right, Treeman, feel it. cool. Treeman. Yeah, really dope vibes. The maybe not, but the crash. The fill sounds like it's sampled from Dario Diatis. Maybe even from the project I did about Dario Diatis. I'm not sure. But anyway, really cool vibes. I could see it. Yeah, I mean, it could. It's got. I think in the chat people mentioned Cubico. Excuse me. Yeah, really cool vibes. I think maybe the arrangement's a little bit drawn out. Maybe I've been talking too much, but I think maybe the arrangement's a bit too drawn out. I would try to condense it, get to that vocal a bit sooner. Something that Dario Diatis and Cubico both do in their tracks is have maybe a vocal hook or theme and then a melodic hook or theme. And I think this could have a stronger melodic theme. The groove and stuff is really solid. It's spot on, but I think with some kind of more memorable melodic hook, because the vocal also is really cool. It feels a little bit, when it came in I was a little bit surprised that it was so laid back, but it still works. So I think if you can kind of get a melodic hook that you can then interchange with the vocal. Also, something that Dario Diatis does in his tracks is will use some kind of vocal chops from the main vocal to help introduce it. It kind of acts as another kind of lead element, so you could give that a go. And just for modern house music, I think try to keep it to maybe 6 minutes or something. It's not, whatever, it's your track, you do what you like, but this is just a trend that I observe, and it's also the way people DJ these days. The tracks tend to be shorter, people tend to play less of them, so if you can kind of condense what you're trying to say with the track into a more bite-sized package, then I think it's more easily consumable in the era that we live in. But yeah, really good stuff, man. I think you've done a great job. Some things in the mix down come across as a little bit too loud, like the fills and crashes a little bit, but it's getting nitpicky. The idea that you've got there is really good. All right, Will McQueen, Liberated. Let's get into it. this is Will McQueen. This is sick, bro. It's got in my opinion, it's got the potential to be like a big track. It's the execution could use a little work in my opinion, but I think it's got this, like, there's something special about it. I really like it. I think these stabs, like the mix down, could definitely use some work. Let's take a look at the waveform here. Maybe it's the kick. The kick sounds a bit thin, a bit like it. Let me have a look at this with a spectrum analyzer. Yeah, I don't know, maybe try pitching the kick down like 2 semitones or something like that. So it just has a bit more sub. And then these bass organ sound things are a bit too loud, and they've got maybe a bit too much reverb and delay on them. You could try cutting out some of the low frequencies from that, like reverb and delay. If you're not doing it, then try using the like send and returns. So send it to like a reverb and then cut out the lows. That'll allow the original sound to have a lot of impact, but also create the kind of more washy atmospheric effect. I think it's really cool. Reference some audio jack tracks. They use kind of bass sounds in this kind of way really, really well, really effectively. Amazing producers, audio jack. They're a lesson in simplicity, but every element has like so much impact. Some of my favorite producers. But anyway, so this happens. Oh. The vocals building up, awesome, great stuff. Then what I would do right there is, so you're building it up, there's like anticipation. What I would do there is cut that vocal, create like a dynamic break there. So you have the like reverb and stuff spill over, but you cut that vocal out, and maybe even cut the open hat or the clap or something like that. So it's really like this kind of, you could, it's way overdone, but if you use it subtly lower in the mix, you could put in like a 909 snare fill or something, to snare riser, to bring up a bit more energy. You don't have to, you could experiment with it. But then I think creating like a dynamic moment at that point would like really, I can picture that in a bigger club and people going mental, right? Then you bring back the vocal. Or what you could even do is like, so you've filtered in the vocal at the start. Have the vocal like filtering in here, and then when you bring in these higher synths, they're gonna be a lot more audible, and they're gonna have a lot more impact and add energy. So by that time, then when you've like filtered in the vocal, you're kind of letting it go, letting it come in full frequency here. So that's going to create more impact in this break. You've got this RP sound, which is cool, but it just comes a bit out of nowhere, and it's in the outro of your track. This is only 3.5 minutes, so I'm assuming it's maybe not finished. But introducing this sound somewhere in the break, so maybe this break is an extra 16 bars or something. it kind of builds down a bit more, then you introduce this element, build it up a bit more, and then drop it back maybe again without the vocal and with this element like really full on, and then have a section where that works, and then maybe bring the vocal back in before having a small break and outro. There's an idea for you, or a bunch of ideas for you, but I think you've got some great potential for this track, and yeah, congratulations. It could be, it sounds to me like if it was executed, if it was like I don't know, if it was done by Bicep or something, it would be a top 10. Anyway, maybe Bicep's not the right reference, but you know, it's got that kind of like retro-y, warehousey kind of feel-good vibe. Jamie, please. Okay, if it's Jamie, put 1 in the chat. If it's Jamie, put 2 in the chat. If it's James, put 3 in the chat. Sorry that I keep screwing up your name. Let's go.
And darling, 'cause I wanna be with you. Come on, girl, come on, girl. I need to let you know that I wanna make you moan. You wanna go tonight? I don't think I feel right if I don't have you by my side. Do you wanna go tonight? I don't think I feel right.
All right, so I think I've got a good idea of the track. It's got some really cool ideas. The a cappella is way overused at this point. Like, I can't remember the name of the pack, but super cool pack from Splice. But it's been used on some really big labels by some really big artists now. So yeah, unfortunately. I've even done a couple of tracks with it myself. One, we were talking to Toolroom about releasing it, and then Mark Knight released a track with one of the acapellas a couple of weeks later. So, I don't know. But anyway, that was maybe even a couple of years ago. But anyway, yeah. And then the way that you've kind of the arrangement is a bit, you kind of build it up and then drop everything in here. I would say that when it comes in here,
Tell me if it feels tonight. Hold you tight tonight.
like it takes 2 minutes of the track to get to this kind of groove part. That bit there, like I think you should go about introducing the instrumentation before the vocal. It just makes more sense in an arrangement kind of way, and then dropping in at after 16 bars to the full vocal, and then having kind of chopped up vocals is also maybe a bit back the front. If you think about it, like we're making, it's house music here. We're making it for DJs to play essentially. A DJ is going to mix in your track. If it's me mixing in, I normally drop a track in after like 1 minute. So that first 30 seconds of that verse is not going to get heard on the dance floor, So I would say maybe start to bring the vocal in here, or like you could like build it up, bring in the instrumentation a bit more, bring in some vocal chops, then bring the full like verse part in here, something like that. I think just reference some other tracks and see how they do it. Yeah, I mean it's also like I've pulled this track down by 3.5 dB to get it to -9 LUFS. I think
Tonight. Tell me if it feels like. Do you wanna go tonight?
like it's super distorted, bro. You've really limited the hell out of that. If I play it at
Tonight. Tell me if it feels like. Do you wanna go tonight?
I mean, yeah, there's a point where it's like Toolroom and stuff have stuff that's even like -6, but the mastering engineers who are doing that are very experienced. To just throw a limiter on your track and crush it down to like -4 LUFS, you're introducing so much distortion. It's super audible. So for kind of mixing and that kind of thing, I would recommend like limiting it to around like -9 LUFS. And that's gonna allow you to get it like loud and compare it to other tracks that are mastered, but without crushing it and sounding like it. I can't tell you about the mix really because it's so compressed. I can tell you it probably sounds not too bad actually, because yeah, I like the vibe you've got there. I think just working with the arrangement, the instrumentation bit that you've got happening here, it's got a cool fun vibe, like funky, groovy, and ease back a lot on that limiter, because it's really distorted and really crushed, so it's quite hard for me to give you any constructive feedback on the mix. Like I can't hear if the clap's too loud or anything like that. Yeah. What else?
Do you wanna go tonight?
Yeah, I'd say just reference for the arrangement. If anyone who's having trouble with an arrangement, doesn't know where to start with it, reference one. Find a track that's in a similar style to what you're doing. Kind of just do it super quickly. Copy their arrangement, like in a really basic way. Throw in your arrangement. Delete their track from your arrangement view, and then like finesse your arrangement, make your arrangement work. But it's like, generally I find when I used to start arranging from bar 1 forward, I would encounter a lot of the problems that I've seen other people encounter today with their arrangements, where you use all your elements first, you do things that don't end up making too much sense from like a DJ perspective, like putting in a verse here, then vocal chops here. Yeah, so just reference, copy what someone else has done, and that's how you learn. That's how you figure out what works and what doesn't. So yeah, it's no big deal that you've done it differently here, but my advice is to try to kind of be purposeful in why you're arranging things in a certain way. And if you can get away from starting to arrange here, adding things, then you're going to end up, I feel, with like tracks that have a lot more space and make a lot more sense. All right, guys. So I think, yeah, I'm almost half an hour over the time that I was supposed to be doing this for. So I'm going to call it there. Thanks everyone so much for submitting your tracks. There's some really cool stuff in there, and I really appreciate you guys putting yourselves out there. It's not easy to throw your stuff out there to be on the internet and be critiqued and that kind of thing. So yeah, I really appreciate you doing that, and big up to you for taking the time, and everyone who's tuned in. Thanks for watching. All right, enjoy the rest of your Sunday, guys.